Before Lyla became the child at the center of a murder case, she was the girl doing cartwheels in the yard. The neighbor everyone remembered as funny, talkative, and relentlessly cheerful. That is where this story needs to begin. Not with a courtroom, not with an autopsy report, and not with the final images that would later come to define the case. Lyla Lynn Cassel was born in Michigan on June 27, 2015, to Chelsea Renee Duperon and Josh Castle. She had an older brother, and on her father's side, she would later have a younger half-brother. Tragically, Lyla never had the opportunity to meet him. The people who knew her described a happy, affectionate little girl. Sweet, yes, but witty, too. She told jokes. She loved making people laugh. She was talkative, energetic, and happiest when she could be outside. At Roosevelt McGrath Elementary School, Lyla had friends and enjoyed going to class. Away from school, she loved music, singing, and dancing. Taylor Swift was a favorite, so were Garfield and SpongeBob. She enjoyed gymnastics, riding her bicycle, and spending time with other children. And she liked feeling pretty. Lyla loved having her hair done, especially when someone finished it with a colorful bow. These details might seem small, but look at family photographs of Lyla at different ages, and that is what stands out. Not one frozen moment, but a childhood in motion. A girl smiling with relatives, a girl playing outside, a girl growing taller, learning new things, and building the ordinary collection of favorite songs, television characters, and family routines that makes a child unmistakably herself. One memory later shared in court captured that confidence perfectly. When it was time to remove the training wheels from Lyla's bicycle, her mother was nervous. Lyla was not. She climbed on and took off almost immediately. That sounds like her. Ready to go. Neighbor Jason Wilhoit remembered seeing Lyla playing in the front yard and doing cartwheels. He described her as a fantastic, lovable kid. Funny, full of jokes, and always eager to talk. Whenever she came over, she appeared cheerful. And that contrast is important. To the people nearby, Lyla was visible, social, full of energy. She played outside and interacted with neighbors. Nothing about those ordinary encounters fully revealed what her life inside the home would eventually become. Some of the people who loved Lyla had already lost access to those everyday moments. Members of her paternal family said they had been separated from her for years and were forced to watch her grow up largely through photographs and updates posted online. They alleged that Chelsea had made false or unproven accusations against Josh and had used those claims to restrict the family's contact with Lyla. Josh was never charged in connection with those allegations, but the exact history of the custody dispute was described publicly through competing family claims. What is clear is the result: distance. Lyla's paternal grandmother, Lyla Cassel, said the family had been kept away for roughly 5 years. During that time, Josh had another child. A little boy who would never meet his big sister or learn firsthand why relatives remembered her as kind, helpful, and eager to make peace. Terry would later say that Lyla had been taken from the family twice. First through separation, then permanently through her death. That is the bitter shape of Lyla's story before the criminal case even begins. She was surrounded by relationships, but not everyone who loved her had equal access to the world in which she was living. Some saw her doing cartwheels across the yard. Others could only watch her grow through a screen. But Lyla was never merely a victim's name attached to a charge. She was 8 years old. She sang, danced, rode her bike, wore bows, told jokes, loved her friends, and seemed to bring her own momentum wherever she went. Then, before dawn on March 16th, a call finally came from the house on Phyllis Street. The timing of that call would become almost as important as what officers found inside. At roughly 5 in the morning on March 16th, 2024, Chelsea Duperon told dispatchers that her 8-year-old daughter was not breathing. Wayne police officers and emergency responders were sent to the home on Phyllis Street. But inside Lyla's bedroom, they discovered that this was not a sudden medical emergency. She was lying unresponsive on the floor. She was not breathing, and her body was cold. Responders transported her to the hospital, but there was nothing they could do to save her. And even before an autopsy, there were obvious reasons to question what had happened inside that house. Lyla had extensive bruising and swelling around her head, face, and neck. These were not subtle injuries. This child had clearly been hurt, and whatever had happened to her had not happened moments before the call. The medical examiner would establish the cause of death: blunt force trauma to the head. The trauma caused severe swelling in Lyla's brain, leading to catastrophic brain damage and, ultimately, her death. But the date of the call was only one part of the timeline. Investigators determined that Lyla had been assaulted on March 13th, approximately 3 days before Chelsea finally called 911. That meant the critical question was no longer just how Lyla had been injured. It was why she had gone without emergency treatment for so long. Chelsea's first explanation was an accident. She told police that Lyla had been playing or fooling around near the basement stairs when she fell down them. It was the kind of explanation that, on the surface, offered a simple reason for a head injury. Children fall. Stairs can be dangerous. Terrible accidents do happen. But this explanation had to match the physical evidence. It didn't. When someone tumbles down a staircase, investigators generally expect injuries across multiple areas of the body. Arms, legs, shoulders, hips. The places that strike steps, walls, or railings on the way down. Lyla's documented injuries did not show the broader pattern expected from a routine stairway fall. The concentration and severity of the trauma to her head, face, and neck pointed to something else. And then there was a smaller detail, one that said a great deal about what those 3 days had looked like. Responders noticed that Lyla was wearing a diaper. At 8 years old, she was already toilet trained. When police asked Chelsea why her daughter had been placed in one, Chelsea said that after Lyla was injured, it had become too difficult for her to get to the bathroom by herself. Using a diaper had simply been easier. Think about what that explanation admits. Whatever Chelsea claimed had caused the injuries, she knew Lyla's physical condition had changed dramatically. Lyla was no longer able to manage an ordinary walk to the bathroom without difficulty. This was not a child who had taken a minor fall, cried, and then returned to normal. She was incapacitated enough that the adults in the house changed how her most basic needs were handled. And still, no one called for help that day. Not when she was injured on March 13th. Not when she could no longer easily reach the bathroom. Not as her condition continued to deteriorate. The emergency call came only on March 16th, after Lyla was no longer breathing. Prosecutors later said that if someone had called 911 on the day of the assault, Lyla might have survived. We cannot know precisely what would have happened after immediate treatment. What we do know is that she was denied that chance. Throughout the period when medical intervention could have mattered most, she remained inside the house without emergency care. By the time the autopsy findings were considered alongside the condition in which Lyla had been found, the idea of a minor accident was no longer credible. She had suffered a fatal assault, and someone had allowed the consequences to unfold for days. But the first visible crack in Chelsea's account did not come from a witness statement or a laboratory result. It was visible on Chelsea herself. One of her hands was so badly swollen that an officer asked what she had been punching. The officer began with questions about Lyla. Then he noticed Chelsea repeatedly shifting her body, as if she were trying to keep her right hand and arm out of view. Until that moment, the questions had focused on the child. When had Lyla last spoken? Had she been walking? Had she seemed alert? Chelsea said Lyla had talked to her and claimed she had been getting better after falling down the basement stairs. But that answer created a much bigger problem. If Lyla had been visibly bruised for 2 days, why had nobody taken her to a hospital? And then there was Chelsea's hand. It was swollen. Her arm was bruised. One officer told her that the fist looked as though she had been punching something. This is where the conversation inside that living room changed.
You saw her awake, up? Did she have any medical conditions or anything like that? No. No special disabilities or anything like that? So at 10 p.m., what was the context? Were you putting her to bed? Was she awake? Was she walking around?
I was laying in bed with her and was asking if she was okay, and I gave her water, and I just laid down in bed with her.
In her bed? Mm-hmm. And that was at 10 o'clock, roughly? Mm-hmm. And she was talking to you, she was breathing? Mm-hmm. And then what happened after that? Did you fall asleep in there with her? Did you wake up next to her? What? Yeah,
no, I've been sleeping in there with her. And then I came to sleep out here, and I just went to check on her, and she was cold.
He's outside with, is it stepdad?
Yeah, this is my boyfriend.
Sorry. And then, what's the backstory in regards to her falling down the stairs? How long ago did that take place?
I think it was 2 days ago.
2 days ago?
It seemed like she was getting better.
So 2 days ago she fell down the basement stairs? Mm-hmm. She fell from the top?
Mm-hmm.
Has she been bruised like that for 2 days?
Yeah.
Well, what time was the last time she was like talking to you?
Yesterday. Well, no, actually, no. Today she talked to me.
Are your hands usually that swollen, like bruises on your arms as well? You got like, that hand is completely different size, your whole arm, like, what's going on with all that stuff?
No.
You got to talk to them.
She is talking. Do you know something that we need to know or what? I'll be completely honest, guys. A lot of stuff isn't adding up right now, respectfully.
Chelsea.
So what's going on? Like your entire fist is swollen like you've been punching something. You have bruises all over your arms. So what's going on?
Chelsea. Chelsea.
Come talk to me outside, sir.
Chelsea. You gotta talk.
Just step outside for me.
She said that I did hit him.
She said that what?
That I hit him. Not then. She said downstairs. She said she went downstairs, and then when I came down, I hit her.
She said that you hit her? Down the stairs?
Not down the stairs, but when we were downstairs. But it's like, I don't remember that at all. Like, I literally remember going downstairs, we were listening to music, we was gonna go grocery shopping, and then, yeah, I felt like, I thought I seen a lady down there, and then all of a sudden, it was like I woke up.
Who told you that you hit her?
Lyla did.
That's her, Lyla, in there? How old is she?
8.
She said that you hit her? This was...
But she said your lips were black, but it was you, I think. I'm like, I don't know what it means.
Okay. This was 2 days ago?
I believe it was 2 days ago.
Is there anything that would, I guess, why you wouldn't remember? Do
No,
you suffer from anything? Do you take any drugs or alcohol or anything like that?
I mean, I drink alcohol, but I quit.
When was the last time you drank?
Well, I've been on and off trying to quit, but I quit for like a few days. He'd probably remember better than I can.
Do you remember the last time you drank something? Today's now Saturday.
The other day when I ran to Rite Aid to get a couple double shots.
Or the other day?
Or not double shots, little dollars.
When?
Was it yesterday or the day before? Yesterday.
Okay, so you're trying to quit, but you just kind of
Yeah.
haven't yet. Okay.
Can you grab
My
his
mom
info,
said I
Mo?
shouldn't do it all at once, but
Really quick, what's your first name? Do you need hers?
Chelsea.
Yeah. On the top.
He said, like, I would never, I don't even spank my baby though. He said, I know I did not do that.
What do you think caused this?
I don't know.
Now, when she said Mom, you hit me, because you're a mom, right? Did she look like that? Did she have those bruises
Yeah.
already? You don't remember doing that?
Not at all.
Any drinking, any drugs?
No, I was not.
Can I talk to you?
Like, I was completely sober. I quit drinking. I was sober.
Why don't you remember what happened?
I don't know. That's what I'm saying. I honestly think this house is haunted. And it sounds crazy. That's why I don't.
Are we going with the ghost?
When she said that you hit her, can you be more elaborate? How did she say? Did she one smack, one punch, multiple punches?
She didn't say.
There was no specification.
Mm-mm. And it was like everything was good, so there'd be no reason for me to even hit her. And I don't whoop her or anything. So.
And so, do you remember seeing her when you went downstairs? Because she fell down the stairs and you went behind her, correct? Is that what you said?
I just remember we was listening to music. I was gonna go put clothes in the laundry, and then I went around because I was telling her it's like it's fine, there's no demons in here, nothing, and she was all like, I think there is, and I was like, no, there's not. And then we were listening to my music that makes me feel good, and then we went downstairs, and all of a sudden I was like, I turned the corner, and there was a lady there, and she was all like, I don't like your music, and I was just like, and then yeah, and that makes no sense. That's why I don't like saying that.
So once you saw this face in front of you, is that when you started just punching?
No, I just don't really, I don't remember really.
And you just like blacked out. And then when was the last time you remember coming back to? From the time that she fell down the stairs and you went down there with her, you blacked out, and then when was the next thing that you remember? When what?
When Dana got home from work. Well, there was, see, I don't know.
Can we restart from like the top? Maybe?
No, I don't want to. It's like, it sounds crazy saying it out loud, and I just...
Well, it's not about sounding crazy. We're just trying to make sure that it's accurate.
Like, I'm trying to think about, it's like, I just lost my daughter, and I really don't feel like talking about anything right now.
Okay, well,
It's like, I didn't do it. I know it looks that way.
we're not
I swear
saying
to God, I didn't, though. No,
we're
it's
not,
fine. I don't care. Go ahead.
No,
I
we're
know
not
it
saying
looks
you
that way,
did.
though.
We're just trying to figure out what happened. And we're not
Okay,
leaving
and
your
I'm
living
saying
room.
it's confusing.
Okay, and we're not leaving your living room until we find out what happened, okay?
I know. But I'm not, I don't know. I can't tell you what happened.
By the end of that exchange, officers were no longer treating Chelsea only as a grieving mother, giving them background information. They were testing her story against what they could see with their own eyes, and the story would not stay still. The first explanation had been simple. Lyla fell down the stairs. It was an accident. But the medical evidence did not fit an accidental fall, and Chelsea's own injuries demanded an explanation. Then, according to Chelsea, there had been an unknown woman in the basement. She described seeing someone who appeared out of nowhere and objected to the music playing in the house. That claim then shifted into an apparent blackout. At other points, Chelsea spoke about spirits, demons, possession, and believing the house was haunted. Those were Chelsea's claims. Investigators did not establish that any unknown woman existed, and they had no reason to treat a supernatural explanation as fact. What they did have was something far more direct. Chelsea said Lyla herself had told her what happened. Lyla had identified her mother as the person who hit her. Think about the contradiction there. Chelsea said she could not remember assaulting Lyla. She claimed there was a gap between going downstairs and becoming aware again when her boyfriend returned from work. Yet she also acknowledged that her 8-year-old daughter had told her, plainly, that she had struck her. And Chelsea's hand supplied a physical detail that memory loss could not explain away. Officers also questioned her about alcohol. Chelsea said she drank but had been trying to quit. At one point, she described herself as completely sober. At another, she admitted going to Rite Aid shortly before the emergency call to purchase small bottles of alcohol. Even the timing seemed difficult for her to state consistently. None of that required the officers to solve a paranormal mystery or decide, in that living room, exactly why Chelsea's account kept changing. Their job was more practical. Compare each version with Lyla's injuries. Compare it with what Lyla had reportedly said while she was still alive. Compare it with the delay in seeking help. And compare it with the swelling and bruising on Chelsea's right hand and arm. Chelsea eventually asked whether they could restart from the beginning. Then she said she did not want to continue. She had just lost her daughter, she told them, and did not feel like talking. The officers made their position clear. They were not leaving that living room until they understood what had happened. Chelsea insisted that she did not know. She said she could not tell them. But amid the fall, the unknown woman, the blackout, and the claims about haunting or possession, one admission never changed. Lyla had said her mother hit her. Chelsea Duperon was arrested and initially charged with felony murder and first-degree child abuse. She was held without bond. The questioning that had begun inside a cluttered, chaotic home now moved into a formal criminal case, with prosecutors, court hearings, and written charges replacing the confusion of that morning. At her arraignment, Chelsea pleaded not guilty. The court ordered her to have no contact with her live-in boyfriend and required her to undergo a psychiatric evaluation. Whatever explanations she might offer later, the case would be judged through evidence, not claims of spirits or missing memories. By then, investigators had a reported statement from Lyla, medical findings inconsistent with a simple stairway fall, and visible injuries on Chelsea's hand and arm. A supernatural explanation could not erase any of it. Yet Chelsea was not the only adult who knew Lyla was hurt. Another person entered the house on March 13th, saw the child in obvious distress, spoke to her the following day, and still did not call for help. Chelsea's live-in boyfriend reportedly came home from work at around 3:30 that Wednesday afternoon. He found Chelsea outside, pointing toward the house and talking about being possessed. Then he went inside. Lyla was lying on the floor with water around her. Family members and social media accounts have identified the boyfriend as Daniel or Danny Probst. Early official reporting, however, did not consistently publish his name, so it is important to be careful here. What follows is the account he reportedly gave investigators, not a finding that every part of his version was independently proven. According to that account, nothing had seemed especially unusual inside the home at the beginning of the week. He described Monday and Tuesday as normal. Then, late Tuesday night, he and Chelsea had an argument. Public accounts do not make clear what that argument was about. The next day was March 13th. When he returned from work, he said he encountered Chelsea outside, behaving strangely and talking about possession. Inside the house, he found 8-year-old Lyla on the floor. She was wet. She was visibly in distress, but she was still responsive. She could still speak. Think about that for a second. This was not someone discovering a child after it was already too late to intervene. By his own reported account, he found Lyla alive and conscious after something serious had happened inside that house. He picked her up, carried her into her bedroom, and placed her in bed. But he did not call 911. His reported explanation was that Lyla was not his daughter, so he did not believe it was his responsibility to seek medical help or report what had happened. He left that decision to Chelsea. That answer is difficult to sit with. An 8-year-old child does not have to be yours before you can recognize an emergency. Lyla was on the floor, surrounded by water and clearly struggling. A phone call could have brought paramedics to the house within minutes. Instead, she was put to bed. And the following day, he reportedly spoke to her about what had happened. According to the boyfriend's account, Lyla told him that Chelsea had been listening to music when she suddenly attacked her. Lyla said she ran into the basement and hid. She said Chelsea persuaded her to come back out, poured water on her, and began hitting her. To be precise, that is Lyla's reported statement as later relayed by the boyfriend. We do not have Lyla here to explain it in her own words, and his retelling should not be confused with an independently recorded interview. What was independently established is that Lyla suffered fatal blunt force trauma to her head, that her death was ruled a homicide, and that Chelsea later pleaded guilty to second-degree murder. But even if we limit ourselves to what the boyfriend said, the problem is impossible to miss. On Wednesday, he saw Lyla in obvious distress. On Thursday, she reportedly told him that her mother had attacked her. He now had more than a vague suspicion. He had a visibly injured child describing who had hurt her. Still, no emergency call came. 2 days after that reported conversation, Lyla was dead. Early coverage and claims surrounding the case created confusion about whether Chelsea's boyfriend would face criminal consequences. Ultimately, according to the case information available, he was questioned but was not charged. That does not establish criminal guilt, and the absence of charges should not be presented as proof of wrongdoing. But it does leave an accountability question that the criminal case against Chelsea never fully answered. What responsibility belongs to an adult who sees an injured child, hears her identify her attacker, and chooses not to summon help? Later released body camera footage shows the boyfriend at the Phyllis Street house while officers questioned Chelsea. He remained physically present at the end of the timeline, just as he had been present during the days when intervention was still possible. Yet the prosecution ultimately concluded with Chelsea alone facing punishment for Lyla's death. By his own reported account, the boyfriend knew Lyla had been injured. He had enough information to understand that Chelsea was implicated. What he did not do was summon the emergency care prosecutor said might have saved her. And this was not the first time people around that household had felt uneasy. Long before the 911 call, neighbors had heard threats through the walls, and one of them had already taken surveillance footage to the police. The neighbors said they never saw Lyla being physically abused. What they heard, however, was enough to make them watch the house more closely. And those concerns did not begin on Phyllis Street. Before moving to Wayne, Chelsea, Lyla, and Chelsea's boyfriend had lived in Huron Township. Lyla made friends there, and according to one friend's mother, she sometimes stayed at their home for days at a time. That woman later alleged that Chelsea's boyfriend was abusive toward both Chelsea and Lyla. Her claims were disturbing. She said he entered her home without permission on multiple occasions. During one overnight visit, she alleged he arrived in the middle of the night, went inside, grabbed Lyla, and took her home. The same woman described another incident involving Chelsea. She claimed the boyfriend came to the house while Chelsea was visiting, pulled Chelsea outside by her hair, and assaulted her in the front yard. A police report was reportedly filed, although Chelsea later denied that the assault had happened. These are allegations from an acquaintance, not findings from a court. But they matter because they show that people around the family had already become uneasy about the adults in Lyla's life. After the move to Wayne, that unease followed them. Neighbors said they heard Chelsea's boyfriend yelling at both Chelsea and Lyla. One phrase stayed with them. "You want something to cry about? I'll give you something to cry about." Think about what that does to a neighbor. You hear something alarming. You pay closer attention. Maybe you check your cameras. Maybe you start watching whenever the child is outside. But unless you actually witness physical violence, what can you prove? One neighbor did take what he had to police.
They were concerned about what was happening at this home, so they looked out for Lyla, never saw any signs of abuse, but were worried about what else they saw and heard here.
I could hear him yelling at her, not only the mother, but the child. You want something to cry about, I'll give you something to cry about. I mean, who speaks to their kids like that? I went to the police with videos from my cameras, and I showed them the things that I saw was going on, and they told us if we ever saw abuse on the child, to let them know.
Now neighbor Jason Wilhoit remembering Lyla instead of trying to watch out for her.
Fantastic kid, playing in the front yard, cartwheels, just a lovable kid, funny kid. Jokes, I'm just very talkative, cheery, always happy when she was over here.
That is the gap this case kept falling into. The distance between suspicion and evidence someone believed they could act on. The neighbors were concerned enough to monitor the house and share surveillance material. But by their own accounts, they had not personally seen Lyla being physically attacked. They were told to report it if they did. So they watched. They worried. And whatever was happening inside the home remained just beyond what they could establish. Jason Wilhoit remembered a completely different side of life outside that house. To him, Lyla was a fantastic kid. The funny, talkative girl playing in the front yard, doing cartwheels and chatting with the neighbors. She seemed cheerful, lovable, always happy when she came over. That contrast is hard to sit with. The adults around the home were raising concerns, while Lyla was still presenting herself to the neighborhood as the same bright child everyone knew. Questions also surrounded Chelsea. A former classmate later characterized her as violent and said she had made numerous enemies in high school, with repeated conflicts involving other girls. Again, that is one acquaintance's account. It does not prove what happened to Lyla years later, but it became part of the picture people tried to assemble after her death. There was also an older post from Chelsea's Facebook page. She wrote, "I'm trying to be a gentle parent, but it's like they think I'm a pussy or something. A social media post is not evidence of murder. Still, viewed after the fact, it offered an unsettling glimpse of how Chelsea publicly described the tension between restraint and punishment. Relatives also said Chelsea struggled with alcohol. They alleged that she had previously driven after drinking while Lyla was in the car, and some family members suspected substance use around the time of the killing. Those claims were not the medical examiner's conclusion, and they should not be treated as an explanation for the assault. They were concerns voiced by people who believed the danger had been building. But one entire side of Lyla's family was not close enough to see it building. Her paternal relatives said Chelsea had kept them away from Lyla for months, and, in some cases, years. They disputed claims that Lyla's father, Josh Cassel, had abandoned her or failed to pay child support. According to them, Josh lost his parental rights after Chelsea made allegations that were never properly investigated and never resulted in criminal charges. The family's contention was that the custody system accepted those accusations without giving Josh a fair chance to answer them. The result was not just a legal separation. They had to watch Lyla grow up through photographs on Facebook. For Lyla's paternal grandmother, that separation ended in the worst possible way. She reportedly had not seen her granddaughter in 4 years when she was asked to go to the coroner's office and identify her body because Chelsea would not do it. 4 years without seeing her alive. Then a request to identify her after death. There had been warning signs around the adults in Lyla's home, but none had produced an intervention that removed her from danger. Concern existed in fragments, among neighbors, friends, and estranged relatives, without ever becoming protection. Once the case reached court, the central question was no longer whether Chelsea had offered contradictory stories. It was whether prosecutors could turn 3 lost days a child's reported words, and the medical evidence into legal responsibility. The prosecution described Lyla's injuries as among the worst its child abuse attorneys had encountered. But this case would not end with the jury deciding the original charges. Chelsea Duperon was initially charged with felony murder and first-degree child abuse. In plain terms, prosecutors were not alleging that Lyla's death happened separately from the abuse. The felony murder charge tied the killing directly to the commission of another serious felony. In this case, severe child abuse. Their position was that the assault and Lyla's death were part of the same criminal act. Assistant Wayne County Prosecutor Erin Wilmoth put the severity of the case into stark terms. She said the brutality inflicted on 8-year-old Lyla was unlike anything she had encountered in 5 years of handling child abuse cases. That assessment was not based on one disputed statement or one officer's impression. The case had several parts, and each one reinforced the others. The medical examiner ruled Lyla's death a homicide caused by blunt force trauma to the head. Investigators knew the emergency call had been delayed for days, even as her condition deteriorated. They saw the swelling and bruising on Chelsea's hand and arm. They heard her explanation shift from a fall to a mysterious woman, to spirits, possession, and a blackout she said she could not remember. And then there was what Lyla herself had reportedly said, that her mother had attacked her. Prosecutors also alleged that makeup had been placed on Lyla before the 911 call-in in an attempt to conceal some of her visible injuries. That allegation came from the prosecution, and it added another disturbing question. If someone was trying to make those injuries less noticeable, what did that suggest about what the adults inside the house already understood? Chelsea pleaded not guilty at her arraignment. She was held without bail, ordered to have no contact with her boyfriend, and required to undergo a psychiatric evaluation. Some observers focused on what they described as smirking or an apparent lack of emotion in court. But a facial expression is not reliable evidence of guilt, innocence, or remorse. The evidence that mattered was the medical finding, the timeline, the physical injuries, the changing accounts, and ultimately Chelsea's own plea. That decisive turn came in July 2025. Rather than proceed to trial on the original felony murder and first-degree child abuse charges, Chelsea pleaded guilty to second-degree murder. The plea established her criminal responsibility for Lyla's death without requiring prosecutors to prove the original case to a jury. It also meant there would be no public trial where every part of those 3 days was tested through witness testimony and cross-examination. The boyfriend, who had entered the home after the assault and later spoke with Lyla, might otherwise have been questioned in open court. Investigators could have been asked to walk jurors through Chelsea's conflicting explanations. Medical experts could have explained what treatment might have changed, and when that opportunity disappeared. The guilty plea answered the legal question. It did not answer the human one. At sentencing, Chelsea spoke about the daughter she had named before she was born. She remembered Lyla sitting in the kitchen while she cooked, taking off her training wheels without fear, and waking up to a sleepy little voice calling her the best mother. Listen to how she described those memories.
I was having a baby girl. I remember lying in bed holding my belly and asking, what do you think about the name Lyla? And I felt 2 little kicks in response, and right then as I cried happy tears that my new best friend's name was Lyla. On June 27, 2015, I was blessed with the most perfect baby. I grew into the most caring, smart, funny, loving, sweet girl. I was filled with a love I never knew existed. I remember Lyla sitting in the kitchen while I cooked dinner, and she said, Mama, I know why your food is so yummy. I said, oh yeah, why's that? And she told me, because you make it with love. I was hearing her little sleepy voice first thing in the morning, telling me how much she loves me, and her daily reminders that I'm the best mama. I couldn't have asked for a more perfect daughter. Lyla was so pure and so sweet, always so happy and loving. She never failed to amaze me. I'll never forget when we decided it was time to take off her training wheels. I was so nervous, but she wasn't. She hopped right on her bike and immediately took off. She was a pro on the first try. I couldn't believe it. I loved watching Garfield and SpongeBob. She loved our cat, Kit Kat, and our dog, Sheba. But most of all, she loved her family and friends. Her most favorite memories were definitely with cousins, Nana, Papa, Aunt Ying, and Bub. I will never understand why this tragedy has become our reality. Such a devastating loss of the most beautiful life. Rest in peace, baby girl. Until we meet again, I love you always and forever.
That statement is difficult to hear because the love Chelsea described cannot be separated from why she was standing there. She spoke of Lyla as her new best friend and the most perfect daughter. At the same time, she stood convicted of causing Lyla's death after the child went without the medical care prosecutors said could have saved her. The court had also received mitigation information, including the ordered psychiatric evaluation. But the documented record does not establish that alcohol, drugs, mental illness, or Chelsea's claims about spirits caused the assault. Those possibilities should not be turned into a diagnosis, or an explanation the evidence cannot support. The plea settled who was criminally responsible. Chelsea accepted responsibility for second-degree murder. What it could not explain was how the mother who remembered making dinner with love and hearing Lyla call her the best mama became the person responsible for her final 3 days. The sentence would put a number on Chelsea's punishment. Lyla's grandmother, however, arrived in court to speak about a different calculation. 5 years lost before the murder, and an entire lifetime erased afterward. Terry Cassel told the court that Lyla had been taken from her family twice, first through years of separation, and then forever. On July 28, 2025, Chelsea Duperon returned to court for sentencing. Her guilty plea to second-degree murder meant there would be no full public trial. No jury would hear every witness, weigh every failure, or reconstruct each hour of the 3 days when Lyla was injured and no one called for emergency help. Chelsea was sentenced to 28 to 50 years in prison. That gave the criminal case a clear legal ending. For Lyla's family, though, the hearing was about everything a prison term could not restore. Terry described Lyla as the family's first grandchild. Beautiful, innocent, sweet. She remembered a child who was eager to help, who cared about other people, and who tried to bring peace into every situation. Lyla, she said, always seemed to be wearing a smile. And then Terry spoke about the little brother Lyla never had the chance to meet. During the years Lyla was separated from her paternal relatives, her father, Josh, had another child, a son. Now that boy will grow up knowing he once had a big sister, but he will never hear her laugh for himself. He will never see the kindness his relatives talk about. He will only know Lyla through photographs, stories, and the memories other people preserved for him. That is what Terry meant by taken twice. The paternal family has said that Chelsea made false allegations against Josh and that those claims contributed to him losing access to his daughter. They have also said Lyla was kept away from them for years, leaving them to watch her grow through social media. Those family court allegations remain part of the relatives' account of what happened. They were not fully tested in Chelsea's murder case, but for the family, the result was painfully real. They believe warning signs and disputed claims were handled in ways that separated Lyla from people who loved her without adequately examining the larger situation around her. That belief became the foundation of their advocacy. Lyla's relatives began pushing for a proposal they call Lyla's Law. Their hope is to require more thorough investigation when allegations are used to separate children from a parent, especially when relatives believe those allegations are baseless. It remains a family-led effort, a law they want to see created, not a reform we can say has already solved the problem. Then, in November 2025, another part of the case became public. Police body camera footage from the morning Lyla was found allowed people outside the investigation to see the first questions asked inside that house. Chelsea's boyfriend also appears in the released footage. He was questioned by investigators but was not charged. By that point, officers were already looking at Chelsea's swollen hand, Lyla's condition, and a timeline that kept shifting. One officer finally said aloud what the scene was beginning to suggest. BODYCAM. I'll be completely honest, guys. A lot of stuff isn't adding up right now. Respectfully. So what? What's going on? Like, your entire fist is swollen like you've been punching something. You have bruises all over your arms. So what's going on, Chelsea? I don't know. The public can now watch pieces of that first morning. We can hear the confusion. We can see investigators realize that the explanations do not fit what is in front of them. What we still do not have is a full public trial, or a definitive explanation for why every adult who knew Lyla was gravely injured failed to make the call that might have saved her. Chelsea's plea established her guilt and sent her to prison. It did not force every unanswered question into open court. And because her boyfriend was never charged, the family's wider concerns about accountability remain unresolved. Before the plea, the sentence, and the release of that footage, Lyla's family had already gathered to say goodbye. Her celebration of life was held on April 20th, 2024, at Stark Funeral Home in Ypsilanti. She was later cremated. Her aunt, Elizabeth Duperon, asked people to remember something simpler than the changing stories and courtroom arguments. Lyla was 8 years old, and she shined so bright. Chelsea is now in prison. Lyla's family has a memorial, a proposed law, and a little boy who will know his sister only through other people's memories. But the silence at the center of this case remains. 3 days in which Lyla could reportedly still speak, 3 days in which medical treatment might have saved her, and no emergency call until it was too late. Can any system reliably detect danger when each warning remains isolated from the next? And what should happen when an adult knowingly fails to seek emergency care for a gravely injured child? Subscribe for more victim-centered true crime stories, and tell me in the comments what accountability you believe that failure should carry.